But then I realized something as you were speaking about this incident that you had. And you said something that interested me. When you said you thought, what if she doesn't like me, or what if I'm not a type? But one of the most important steps in mastering a fear, I would say, is to believe that you're good enough for all the right things in life. That is...
You are watching on Becoming with H, your favorite and number one podcast to becoming yourself.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of On Becoming. I'm your host, H. And today, we have an exciting topic. And we are talking about how to master fear. I'm not alone today in the studio. I'm joined by Isaac. Isaac,
Yes,
welcome to On Becoming.
thank you for having me.
Yes. You know, fear is something that has affected many people. It has become one of the greatest obstacles to success and growth.
Yeah.
And today, I have you here so that we discuss how one can master fear in his or her life.
Okay.
Having a reflection back in your life, have you feared before?
Yes, I've faced a lot of fears in my life, and I think it all just comes from your perception of like where you are and where you want to be. And then if there's something that's threatening where you want to be, that becomes a fear. For example, before I came here, I'm a person that likes to give my best whenever I'm doing something. So before I came here, when you gave me an opportunity to be on your podcast, I also had a fear that maybe what if I'm unable to give my best, or what if I'm not good enough to give your audience the best insight. But then I had to look past that. But it was also a fear that I had before I responded to this great opportunity.
Okay, I understand. You see, many people, not many people, everyone
Yes.
has fears.
Yes.
And we have times that we look back and you see that I've lost many opportunities because of fear, right?
Yes.
Is there a moment in your life where you thought that you no longer fear anything, or you don't have any more fears? Was there any moment in life?
If I said there was a moment that I had no more fears, then I would probably be lying to you. But I think the best thing to say would be I've reached a point in my life where even if I have a fear, I'm able to manage it and I'm able to rise above the situation, but the fear will always be there, because at the end of the day, even if I'm a very prayerful person, or if I'm following a lot of psychology or science to combat it, I'm still a human being at the end of the day. So yes, I have fears, but I have come up with a way to minimize the effects of those fears in my life.
Isaac,
Yes.
you mentioned something about being a prayerful person.
Yes.
And just like Job, the Bible says he was a righteous man,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Now Job, because of fear, he gave access to Satan. And that is very important to us as believers, because fear, what I've seen what fear does, fear opens the door to Satan. It gives room and environment for the devil to play in our lives. But now, coming to a point, like the main thing for this podcast, we are saying how to master fear. How to master fear. What are some of the other things that fear does in our life besides giving the devil entry into our lives? I understand, yes, as Christians, God has put a hedge over us.
Yes.
But we destroy that hedge by nurturing fear, by keeping that fear inside of us. What are some of the other things, like some of the results of nurturing fear in our lives?
All right, that's a very interesting question. And to give you an answer from a Christian standpoint, I would first go back to other examples in the Bible, because you mentioned that Satan used Job's fears to enter his life.
It was like an entry point into his life.
Yeah.
Yet God had an hedge over him.
Yeah, but then if you look at it from another different perspective, there are also other Christians like in the Bible that were not affected as a result of their fear, but their fear actually came to distract them from their purpose.
From their purpose.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I will give you an example. Jonah. Jonah was one of God's best servants.
Yes.
And he was on the path to being remembered as one of the great prophets of the Bible. But then when he was given an opportunity, he was given a task by God to go and minister in Nineveh. It was his fear that stopped him from going there and stopped him from achieving his greater purpose. Then also, if you look at the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, like they had a purpose to serve God. But then they were faced with a very dangerous situation when they were told that they had to reject God or be thrown in the lake of fire. But then, being Christians that they were, like being strong believers in God that they were, they chose not to let their fear overcome them and still went on worshiping God despite the challenge that was faced with them, and they were thrown in the lake of fire, but God never deserted them. So why I brought up these examples, I wanted to show that sometimes it's not just that fear has been used as an entry point by Satan to get into our lives. It can also be used to delay your purpose or to stop you from getting to your purpose. So if you find yourself in a situation where you feel worried when it comes to ministering or when it comes to the word of God, just know that you're on track for a great purpose, because that fear is meant to distract you from getting to the point that you need to be as a Christian and as a child of God. So don't use that as a point where you can say you're worried that Satan is about to get into your life, but you should be using it as fuel to pray even harder, because something big is coming for you as a child of God. So that's how I would look at it in terms of fear.
If I'm getting your point very clear, you are saying when fear strikes,
Yes.
it's another sign that great things await for you in it.
Yes.
That's powerful.
Thank you.
That's powerful. And also you mentioned something about experience being the reason why Jonah feared.
Yeah.
How does experience play a major role in the fears we have as we live our day-to-day lives? How does experience shape the fears we have? Understand?
Yeah.
Yeah. For example, let me say, maybe I saw someone drown in the water, right?
Yeah.
In the water. Then from there, I'm afraid. I'm afraid of swimming,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So how can we manage those experiences? How can we heal from experience so that we are able to confront our fears? What would you say?
Okay. To answer that, how we can heal from our experiences to conquer fear. How it works fear from a scientific point of view. The brain is meant to control homeostasis, or in simpler terms, to maintain the internal conditions of our lives that make it comfortable. So if I'm used to waking up at a certain time and doing my things a certain type of way, the moment that I choose that I want to change that routine and start something new, I'll end up going back to my old habits. That's what happens in things like addiction and whatnot. So what the body does is trying to maintain homeostasis, or what it calls a safe spot. So the way to conquer fear is not to put yourself in a spot where you're too familiar with things, because the moment you try to break away from it, you are going to struggle. For example, if I say I have a fear of public speaking, it's not that public speaking is bad. It's just that I'm used to keeping to myself. So when it comes a time when I have to interact with other people, my brain is going to give a response that this is probably not for me, because it's not used to it. It's not that you're bad, but your brain will unintentionally sabotage you because it's not used to it. So I read from Robert Greene in his book,
Yes.
The 48 Laws of Power, where he said, don't allow people to be too familiar with yourself, and you don't even be too familiar with certain behaviors, because they keep you grounded. Choose to be a person that does not take up a particular shape or frame in the minds of people, or even in your own mind. Be adaptable so that when new experiences come through, they are not as new, and your brain is not going to sabotage you, or is not going to put you in a spot where you are uncomfortable in executing a purpose or a mission because you are afraid. That fear is gone because you are always in unfamiliar territory.
Wow. 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 That's a powerful point. Another thing that, like, I would add on one of the causes of fear
Yeah.
is information.
Okay.
The information we have been told before. You understand?
Yes.
Because that information would sometimes cause us even to overthink. You understand?
Yeah.
For example, I would say, like, I had this experience. You understand? There was this girl on campus, I was attracted to, right? I wanted to ask her out, but my mind, every time I would get the opportunity to speak with her, my mind would start to overthink actually. Say, what if she doesn't like me? What if I'm not her type? All those questions,
Yeah.
right? And like, she was now also like a friend. I was also even now afraid to even lose that friendship because I had asked her out.
Okay.
So it drew me into a moment of depression. That worry over and over again. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I
So
understand.
now my question was, like, I really prayed. I don't know, like, then you see, you are afraid of girls. You're afraid of talking to girls. You understand?
Yeah.
And that was a turning point for me, defining that fear. You're afraid of girls. You're afraid of being rejected. That voice, right? And that was a turning point for me, being able to define that fear. And I believe it's it's the early step of trying to overcome or master your fears. When we try to define the fears we have, right? The fear of rejection, the fear of criticism, the fear of old age, all those kind of fears. But now, it was either I would keep on overthinking and driving myself into depression, or I had to face my fears. And the first time I asked her, I said, can we meet in the evening? Because we had this event happening in the evening.
Yeah.
But when I met her, no words came out. No words came out. I couldn't. Then I said, no, I'll call you in the next day. But I didn't call, just because I was driving myself in fear. But now, realizing that I'm losing this opportunity, you understand? I'm really losing this opportunity. What must I do? Then I convinced myself to say, I will face this fear. I will face this fear. That was my moment. And after class, after we had our classes, on our way to lunch, I had planned to tell her, I love you. Just those 3 words, you understand?
Yeah.
But bro, those words couldn't come out. Those words couldn't come out. The question ended up being, do you have a boyfriend? Yeah, you understand?
Yeah.
But now I look back, I'm not afraid anymore. I wouldn't say those fears, they don't come back. No.
Okay.
Those fears, they will come, but now I know how to master them. And that is very key, because one of the ways to master fear is to face them, and their death is certain. Fear will keep on coming.
Yes.
Fear will always be there.
Yes.
My pastor would always say, fear is like a bird, right?
Yes.
You cannot stop a bird from flying over your head, but you can stop it from building a nest on top of your head. So instead of letting fear have a grip, or even instead of having fear, like keeping that fear inside of us, what we have to do is to face it. Because what if I kept overthinking to myself, what if she doesn't like me? What if she rejects me? Right? I know there are many different kinds of fears that many people face, but the starting point is defining that fear. And the second thing is facing that fear. Right? Like Isaac,
Yes, sir.
what is fear like to you? How can you define fear?
If I had to define fear, it would be my way of responding to a situation where things are not going to go well for me. Like, for example, you said you have the fear of rejection.
Yeah.
So you fear that it might not go well for you with that girl. But then I can also have a fear of change. I can be afraid to go into that's a fear. Fear of going to a new environment or meeting new people. That's also a fear. But then I realized something as you were speaking about this incident that you had. And you said something that interested me. When you said you thought, what if she doesn't like me, or what if I'm not a type? But one of the most important steps in mastering a fear, I would say, is to believe that you're good enough for all the right things in life. That is one of the first points you need to get in your life.
Complete, I'm good enough.
Exactly.
I deserve it.
Exactly. You deserve to get that girl, that pretty girl. You deserve to get that promotion at work. You deserve to get those good grades in school. But then where most people get this one wrong, they think telling yourself you deserve it automatically means you do. Because maybe you like this girl, but then maybe you don't dress a certain type of way that would please her, or you don't speak a certain type of way that would impress her. So how it's done, when you think you want something and you're not quite sure you deserve it, position yourself in a way that makes you deserve it, because your brain is not foolish. You don't just say, I dress properly, or I'm very smart, and then it just believes it. It believes some things that it can prove. It believes in proof. So if I say I'm good enough to get distinctions in class, the only way my brain can believe it is if I start studying to get those distinctions. If I say I'm attractive enough to get this girl, then I need to look confident, I need to dress properly, or I need to speak properly. Then if I say I'm good enough to get promoted at work, then I need to show that I'm able to work with people conducively, or if I need to be able to impress my bosses, or I need to put myself in a position where I can get those things and market myself so that my skills can be known. So don't just say you're good enough, or don't just believe you're good enough, but act in a way that makes you good enough. And you will never be afraid to think that I might not get this, maybe I'm not good enough for something.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is key. Dr. Joseph Murphy, in one of his books about the power of the subconscious mind, he says fear is a thought. And he says when we fear, we are afraid of our own thoughts. So for him, on how one can master fear, he says, don't try to resist fear, since it's a thought. And he uses the two laws. He says you can use the law of the subconscious and the law of substitution. He says, since fear, right, is a thought, instead of resisting those thoughts, we have to replace those thoughts. You understand?
Yes.
Because if you really look, fear is just the opposite of faith. Fear is just faith in the wrong thing. You understand? So you, instead of focusing on sickness or focusing on loss, you now turn your thoughts into thinking the right thoughts. You keep imagining things that are positive, health, right? Positive change, like you are not afraid of change. You are someone who dominates or who leads the change. You understand? Yeah. So Dr. Murphy's law of the substitution, it plays an important role, especially for us Christians. Looking at what God says, He says we have to renew our minds to transform our lives. Because the thoughts, they will keep on coming. Thoughts will keep on coming. But now, how do we transform those thoughts? It's by coming into that good environment that God has created for us. He has given us His word. His word. Just like, for example, Joshua. God commanded Joshua to be courageous. That means Joshua, at one point in his life, he was afraid. He didn't want to move. And looking at what courage is moving in spite of fear. So whenever the Bible says, be courageous, it knows that fear is there. God understands that fear is there. But he wants us to master it. Right? He wants us to master it. And that way, I believe many people could move into that zone of depression, into that zone they have been pushed just because of fear, and move into their territory to claim their territory, to claim every opportunity that comes their way. And now with the law of the subconscious, Dr. Mev says that the subconscious mind, when you keep on giving it the right image, the power of imagination, right? It starts to cause your body to express that image. Yeah, I don't know if you're getting my point.
Yes.
Yeah, that is how the subconscious mind works. And those two laws, they are very key. The law of the subconscious and the law of substitution. And we come to one concluding point. Think the right thoughts. We have been hurt before. We have had bad experiences. We have received wrong information. But how do we change them so that we are able to manage them in a way that places us at a point to master or overcome fear? Right? Yeah. So, also on some of the fears, what are some of the common fears that people have? You mentioned something about fear of change, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What are some of the fears that people tend to have?
Well, there are a lot of fears that people tend to have, but I'll just focus on the more common ones to save time. Like I talked about the fear of change, and I talked about the fear of being rejected, but there's also other fears that people have, like the fear of failure. It discourages people from even putting in effort because they are afraid of their efforts going to waste. There's also the fear of being left out because as humans we are social beings. So when we see that we're not being included amongst other people, or we're not fitting in anyway, that tends to trigger us. So people are always afraid of that, being left out. Then there's also the fear of being seen trying, because the next best thing after encouraging someone who's trying is to make fun of their efforts when they don't succeed. So people don't really want to be seen trying. Even if you look you can look at school, for example, people don't want to be known that they're studying.
You see, we have been hearing that fear of failure is very common. But now it's no longer just fear of failure. Fear of being seen trying, just as you are saying. In school, you see people, they don't want to raise their hands to even try to speak out their answer. That try, or even to be seen on the track, trying maybe to lose weight. I don't know what's up with this generation, but how, sorry to cut you off, but how can we resist that thought that we are not good enough to be seen trying?
Okay, so with these fears, what happens is what we are afraid of does not directly affect us. We are afraid of how people will perceive us.
Oh,
exactly.
Yes.
So you gave an example that people don't want to even raise their hands in class, or they don't want to be seen on the track trying to lose weight. If you look at it, if I'm on the track trying to lose weight, that is a goal that's going to benefit me because I'm going to be happy and healthy. But then I'm afraid of what the next person is going to think because I'm just running and I'm maybe not in shape. If I try to answer a question in class, it's going to be for my benefit, because if I'm correct, then I'm happy, I'm going to get confident, and I'm going to keep studying so that I keep being correct. But I'm afraid that if I'm wrong, you or the other person is going to laugh at me for being wrong. and that does not directly affect me. So when it comes to conquering fear, you need to master two things. You need to master the effect on yourself and the effect on other people. And usually the effect on other people is negligible. So you need to, when you're weighing your options, always choose the one that works for you, because that's what the next person is going to do.
Wow.
And if they're not doing it, it's setting you apart from them.
Wow.
So it's important to put yourself first, your priorities first, and your interests first. That's how you conquer fears.
Wow. Wow. I like that point. I like that point. Isaac,
Yes.
thank you for coming to this podcast and sharing that knowledge with everyone here. I believe we've been blessed. I know there's a lot to keep on discussing about. Now, that as we conclude, what are some just few points to conclude this session that you want to share?
Okay, so to conclude, this has been an eye-opening event, like for me and for everyone who was watching. If I were to conclude, I would say that fear is something that affects everyone because everyone is human. But the only way to master it is to put what benefits you first. And you need to understand that as human beings, we're going to make mistakes and we're going to get in a lot of unfamiliar territory. But always consider what's going to be best for your future. And always consider as well what's going to be best for your spiritual life. You need to keep praying. And also you need to consider other people's feelings as well, because I said put yourself first. But then there are some situations where you're afraid of doing something, but it's going to hurt the next person. So consider them as well, but just put yourself first. And remember that fear happens to everyone, but it's the power to conquer it also comes to everyone. And as I conclude, I'm very grateful for you having me on your show and allowing me to share my insight. I hope we're able to do this every once in a while as we share with the audience. And thank you for having me.
Thank you, Isaac. Thank you, Isaac. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on today's episode of On Becoming. And today I was joined by Isaac, and we talked on how one can master his fears, and also some of the causes and effects of fear on our lives. Until next time, keep becoming. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who is also on the journey of On Becoming.